Welcome to
Bean Stuff.
Today we are, we're air quotes finishing up. We're gonna have this 3-part series on coffee botany. But the last episode we had kind of left off with a teaser of we want to talk about Arabica and Robusta.
They're important things to think about, and I think we thought back to our early days of botany, this is going to be boring, but we actually got into it and found out this is important.
It was much more exciting than I was expecting.
Yes.
And we started to talk about it, and I think you brought it up, Dad. You said, this is too important, because we had we want to keep it 30 minutes or something, and we had, only a couple minutes left. We thought, this might be cutting it close.
Arabica in 2 minutes. No.
Especially for something so important.
It's the foundation of what we're talking about here. It's the foundation of the coffee seed. It's what the coffee seed is. It's the why of the coffee seed.
Right.
It's all the who, the where. It's a very important part of drinking this cup of coffee.
And to tie into kind of a little bit of the last episode, we talked about Arabica, Robusta. There's different caffeine contents, different sugar contents, different fat contents, different, even where you grow it has to be or can be somewhat different. Root structure is different. So many different things. Yeah. And there's a couple other ones. Well, there's Liberica.
Yes,
and
Liberica.
There's one that starts with an X or EX, right?
Excelsior or something. And there's another 120. So I
will say real quick, we watched a little video on Liberica, and the leaves on Liberica.
They were big, weren't they?
Big, almost like, I don't actually know what they'd be like, but they were large, bigger than your hand.
Yeah. I mean, they looked like a coffee plant, as we think of coffee plant, if you think of coffee plant.
Right.
But they were bigger, yeah. And as I was thinking, they're there and are used, I think they're used particularly in places like the Philippines, but the flavor is not as good. They grow fairly easily, and you'll see reasons why that's good and bad. Yeah,
well, so we'll jump into it. So we're going to get into kind of some Arabica, Robusta mostly is what we're going to talk about. Those two. Those are kind of that's where the coffee world seems divided or merged in some aspect.
I hear you use the word Arabica and Robusta. Robusta is sort of a common term used out there. Caneophoria is what the official term is. I mean, we're using Arabica is the official term, but Robusta is officially Caneophoria.
Right.
But let's just use Robusta. It's easier to use.
And so if this is your first episode tuning in, you're jumping in 3 deep into the botany of coffee.
Yes.
What is Arabica and Robusta? Just stepping back at a 30,000 foot view, what are those two things? What the heck? What does that even mean?
Right. I mean,
just briefly. I mean, I know that could go into its own thing.
You know me well. I was thinking I was going to go back.
If we could answer it today, Professor.
Okay, I was going to go back to the animal kingdom and the plant kingdom, but that's probably going a little far back. But you need a satellite to see. But as you go down all the phylums and the families, and it goes down and down as you look through the classification system, we've come all the way down to species, which is way down there.
Right.
It's interesting to look at coffee plants and just see
the tree of origin is starting.
All the plants, yes. It's interesting to see which ones are more related than other ones. But we're down to species now, and in the species, we've got of coffea. We've got, it breaks down into, as we said, to 120, 130, whatever, different species. The 2 main ones are Arabica, that we use in the specialty coffee, and that's like 70% is used there. And the other one is Robusta, which is like 30%, give or take some percentage. And then there's a whole lot of little other ones, a few used more than others.
Yeah, I think that's a perfect, quick little summary of those. And it's interesting. I think that Robusta often gets a bad rap, and we'll kind of go into. I'm not advocating for Robusta at the moment, but I think it's interesting.
Yes, yeah, it is interesting, and you're right. It's got some. It's not necessarily bad. It's just got differences that you may not appreciate as usually as you would as an Arabica.
And I think that's an interesting thing to note too. Is Arabica does have some good qualities if that's what you're looking for in your coffee. Like maybe not necessarily flavor. Although you may look for what a Robusta, I don't know. But there's, caffeine content, some different things like that. Also, the ease of growth is huge. Yes. Well, I'm gonna jump into that picture we have that shows the world.
Oh, yes.
For anyone listening, you don't need the picture, but I will put a link in the old show notes. And then if you're watching on the video, I'll put it on the screen so you can kind of see what we're talking about. But there's this awesome I don't know, what would you call it? A diagram, a graph? It's kind of all of them mixed into one.
Infograph, something they call them.
Yeah. So this is from, compoundchem.com.
Yeah.
So we didn't create this. We are absolutely borrowing this, and credit to them.
It's quite fun to go out on the web, and there are a lot of good diagrams.
Is the web fun?
Yes.
It's quite fun to surf on the web.
Okay. And, but when you type in a coffee
What
Arabica.
do you type in for fun on the web these days?
Well, when I type fun, it's usually spelled Arabica.
Arabica.
When I type in Arabica, you can click on all, but you can click on images, and it's interesting. Yeah, it's interesting. You get to see the plant, you get to see all these different info pictures of different things, and there's some. You put them all together and you go, wow, I'm starting to learn about this. This one was particularly good. It sort of brought a lot of things together. There's other ones we use in our Coffee Obsession book that's got a good sort of table there that gives you the pluses and minuses.
I'll put a link to the Coffee Obsession book, at least their website, because it is really good. They have lot of awesome stuff there. Mm-hmm. Also, it sounds like if you just want to shortcut this podcast, go to Google Images and type in Arabica and you kind of get the thing.
Done.
But the infographic that we're looking at just does a really good job of describing only Robusta and Arabica.
Yes.
But it gives some awesome facts. One of the things, like you had mentioned, Dad, earlier, was Arabica is 70% of the world's coffee production versus 30%, which is Robusta. And I think for most people, where they're going to see Robusta, instant coffee?
Instant is very much the place you see Robusta appearing. And there's a lot of reasons for that. Partly it's the caffeine buzz you're going to get from that, but partly it's just the cost. It's just way easier to grow.
Well, and Robusta. I want to dig into the cost part of it too, because I think that it is interesting how. Again, I've never grown a farm of coffee plants, but how I guess resilient in some senses that Robusta is.
Yes,
go ahead.
It is resilient, and why I just say it's even the word robusta, which is come from Caniforia, so it's robust, and that does mean it is more hardy. It gets out there and stays and doesn't get so defeated.
But at the same time, there are still it doesn't just grow everywhere. And what's interesting, so the altitude for Robusta is 0 to 800 meters. If you don't use meters, use Google. But it can grow essentially at sea level.
Yes,
which really opens up the doors to countries that can. What country is the largest producer of Robusta? Or one of them?
Vietnam would be. It's really producing a lot of Robusta,
and they don't really produce too much Arabica.
Not much, no.
And so I think that's kind of interesting because it does open up the doors for countries like Vietnam.
We're talking about Liberia, which is Liberica, I should say, is Philippines. Opens up doors. Yeah, no,
very different to Liberica.
That's right. Opens up Philippines. They now are growing coffee, and so it helps their whole economy.
We were talking earlier, and I said, well, I wonder if you could grow coffee in Texas or somewhere where there's a hot climate. But so if anyone wants to start a Texas coffee farm, let us know how that goes.
I mean, they can. But
it's a big but.
The quality, what's it gonna be? I mean, they grow it in California. It's done. Texas is a different story though.
And there's kind of that whole, between the tropics of Capricorn and Cancer, thing as well. But, and then so in contrast, Arabica is between 600 to 2,200 meters.
Much higher.
Much higher, which I always find that interesting because I feel like the higher in altitude you go, especially in a lot of these countries, the more terrain is rocky or
mountainous. It's getting up there.
Less hospitable
compared to a Brazil, nice and flat. It's different. And Brazil grows good Arabica,
right?
But you get into places where are going really high altitude now. We're talking about Peru. We're talking about some Guatemalan places, Ethiopia. It's really high up there. And that poses its own difficulties.
Well, that adds to cost, I think, just due to the fact of the extra work you have to do either to get to it, to grow it, just the hospitality of the space. I don't know how to say it, but just where it is, it's a lot harder to get to.
It is. It's more difficult, and all the hands that touch that coffee, it's harder for them to get to touch that coffee. It takes longer for them to get that coffee. And so suddenly you've got more cost, as you're saying.
Well, and I guess another piece to that is Arabica is looking for 18 to 36 degrees Celsius of temperature year round.
Yeah.
Whereas, that's Robusta, sorry. Arabica is looking for 15 to 24 degrees. So there's a much smaller margin of
there's a window,
degree or temperature that Arabica grows in, which again throws in another, where Robusta, you might have a year that's colder or hotter. It has a larger range to take
more
that
possibility.
difference.
Yeah, it doesn't sort of change that up as much as it does Arabica. And part of that change in temperature too, which relates to its altitude. As you go higher, it's getting cooler.
Right.
And which is why the Arabica grows at a cooler temperature and at a higher temperature. I think that just that one there, higher, cooler temperature going on there, to me, I look at it like, therefore, the Arabica in one sense has to work so much harder. The plant has to work so much harder to grow those cherries.
Right.
It takes longer. It's trying to suck out all the nutrients it can. It doesn't want to waste what it's doing. And I'm saying it sounds like it's alive. It is alive, but it's living in an intelligent way. But it's just so harder to grow. The outcome of that is, I think that's perhaps why it's a better tasting coffee than the Robusta that just did it. It's quick, it's done, and that has its own advantages.
And I think that one of the other parts that was interesting, I think you brought up some good points there, was the depth of root.
Yes.
Now you had an awesome other infographic, which I will link to if you still have that link open. There we go.
I do have the link. Yes.
What was the depth of the Robusta roots?
Well, Robusta are a lot more shallow than the Arabica.
Okay.
And
so they're kind of shallow, but they
spread out a little wider.
A little wider.
But they don't go down so low, and then you have the difficulty of rainfall.
It doesn't have as much depth to pull.
It doesn't.
Water.
So it can dry out pretty quickly in that sense, compared to the Arabica that goes down deep. But it goes a little wider, so there you've got a plant. It's a little less, so you can fit more trees in a certain area compared to the Robusta. But the roots do go down deep, and that's a positive, negative, however you look at it.
Well, and the thing that I found interesting about that is, so theoretically, based on those facts, you can plant more Arabica coffee trees in a hectare or however large your farm is, an acre.
Yeah.
You can plant more Arabica because their root structure allows for that in closer proximity, right?
Yep.
However, Robusta, even though you can't plant it as close, produces more coffee per area.
The yield
if you had
is bigger. Yeah.
Same area with Robusta, same area with Arabica, you're going to get more from the Robusta, even though there might be less trees. And we learned about last episode, each tree produces a pound of coffee. Yeah. So how's the math work there, Dad?
Yeah. I think for Robusta, I think we said a pound for approximately for the Arabica. For Robusta, you're talking, is it a pound and a half or more, 2 pounds?
Something like that,
It's got a bigger yield anyway.
Which is, I think, another reason why a farmer might... It's so challenging because Robusta, you might be able to get more of a yield. It's more resilient, these things. But you might not be able to sell it for as much because it's not as high quality coffee.
Yeah.
So it's really that interesting kind of like, you can go both ways. But what... is there anything other than instant coffee that Robusta gets used for?
Well, yeah, it does. And I'm thinking, top of my head, I'm thinking Italy. And I've known it's known for having blends for espresso. Yeah. And part of that blend is Arabica. And another part of it, and it depends what shop you go to, right, it's got some Robusta in there. And I believe the idea is to give it some intensity, some bite, and which is the Robusta coming through, obviously. Right. And also it will naturally give it a little more caffeine. I'm not sure that's the desire or not, but so you're going to get a little more buzz from an Italian espresso. Yeah, and so you're also like so you said, like the more caffeine, and I think that's also in instant coffee. That's why you're going to get more kick out of instant coffee than you would out of even an espresso
potentially.
Oh,
Depends
definitely.
on how many scoops you put in. But
Right, how big your volume is, and that. But typically,
if extraction was identical,
yes, 2 times as more probably. Obviously, in the Robusta in the instant style
well,
coffee.
and even one of the infographics we have here says caffeine content in Arabica is 1.2 to 1.5%, whereas in the Robusta it's 2.2 to 2.7. So it's like double.
Funny, my graphic here from the Coffee Obsession book says 1.4% compared to 4% in Robusta. So there's different depends on the varietal you're using, but it's a difference.
That's a kick in the pants right there. That's a lot of caffeine.
Is a kick, yes.
So I mean, and that's an interesting piece too. Like you said, in Italy they use it for sometimes with blending in espressos or something like that to get more robustness.
Yes.
But when's the last time you have tasted a Robusta?
Oh, last time.
Like, I guess
yes.
Where I'm going with this is I want to hear when the last time you tasted a Robusta was.
Yes.
And then I also want to hear, is there any specialty or even good Robusta coffee?
The quick answer to that is yes, there is.
Okay.
And a few years ago, and I've had a few since actually just last year I would have had some Robustas sent to me. We have a group here in Oregon here who sent me some coffee that do Robusta and Arabica.
Interesting.
My boss and I went about 8 years ago to a cupping of Robusta and Arabica. We did the whole day there tasting.
Yeah. Was it a blind cupping? Like, did you taste blind a Robusta next to an Arabica?
Well, it wasn't your typical setup cupping as such. It was just some cups pour overs, and they just brought them out just to taste as samples as such.
Gotcha.
And I would say through the day of cupping both, and they gave us quite a few Robustas because being from the specialty coffee industry, we were naturally thinking, I'm not sure if we want
Robusta is
Robusta.
always like, once people learn about Arabica versus Robusta, it always seems like a buzzword is, kind of like, ooh, stay away from Robusta.
And that was what we found on that day of tasting both, that there were one or two, I probably should say 1 or 2 of the 50 that actually
50 that have all been grown to be tasting good.
Yeah, exactly. Good. And that were of a standard saying that's specialty coffee. That actually has a flavor, has what we're looking for, an acidity, a body, whatever it is, that we could have that and use that as a specialty coffee.
Well, I think it's so interesting because, I think blending it makes sense, getting the best aspects of both of those, pitting those with each other. In one of our infographics, which you'll have a link to, it shows some of the compounds, and there are completely different chemical compound kind of key flavor ones.
Yeah, that's right.
I'm going to describe the Arabica ones. I'm going to name those off. Dad, if you could name off the Robusta ones when I'm done.
Thank you, Reed. You'll see why in a moment.
And I could still mess these ones up, but with Arabica, I'm also for the Robustas. You've got Sotalon, a Behexon,
very good,
and Furanol, and it kind of shows here. But these are kind of your sweeter, your caramel flavors. I would say more delicate complexity, maybe.
They've got some acidity. They've got some and
an acidity in a good way.
Yes. Oh, exactly.
Could be bad.
But, yeah, that's right.
But what about the Arabica or the Robusta? I should say, Dan. What are those ones? Those ones look simple.
Yeah. Well, you gave me 3. Let me give you just one. Like for instance, 3,5-dimethyl-2-ethylfurazine.
Yum.
Oh yeah, compared to 2,3-dial-5-methylfurazine, and the last one, of course, is 4-ethylglycol.
Yeah, interesting compounds. Also, if you need a vocal warm up in the morning before you sing, that's a fantastic way to do it.
10 times fast.
3 words from my favorite songs, right there. It is interesting. Like earthy notes and Robusta. I think. What I've learned from hearing about Robusta, obviously for a long time, but also just looking into it more. Robusta does get such a bad rap. Yeah, and again, it does have some naturally more bitter. It does have more caffeine. It's got less fat. It does have things that are like these are negative. They are not what we look for.
You're right.
But it does have some good qualities.
It does. And I think it's good to say that out loud.
I feel good getting it.
That's good. I think overall you're going to still find, as you cup coffee, as you taste coffee, you'll find just generally it seems to always seem to go towards the Arabica. They're just sweeter. They're got more acidity,
Right. Right.
less caffeine for sure. But the the pluses and minuses there, one of them I discovered recently was that actually the Robusta has more antioxidants than Arabica, and that's
which is interesting. It's another buzzword.
It is a bit of a buzzword. It's part of the chlorogenic acid in the coffee, which breaks down in the roasting process to two different acids.
Yeah.
But that one has a lot of antioxidants. So if I look here, the most you can get in Arabica is 8% compared to that 10% content in Robusta. And there's a positive there that's good. But you go to a fat and sugar, and suddenly you see a real decrease in the Robusta and an increase in the Arabica, like 17 fat in lipids in Arabica and only 11% in the Robusta. And those you will taste the difference. That's why I said a little moment ago, overall, generally, you're going to say, I think I like these more of these Arabicas than I do Robustas.
Right.
There's a different purpose there. There's a different reason why you may like them, and that's part of the whole point here. And the specialty coffee industry, for instance, is a very small percentage of the whole global coffee industry as such. So, but in that, you're going to find that tends to be the way people sort of go to the camp in the Arabica rather than the Robusta. But as you taste some Robustas, and as I said, there are some good ones I've had. I think the ones we had were from India, and they were, some of those I say were actually, wow, that surprised me. They tasted good.
Well, it would be interesting. It'd be interesting to go to the store.
Yes.
To go to the coffee aisle and see if you could find, see if you could find a Robusta, and see if you could find an Arabica. I'm sure you could. I'm sure. It depends where you go, maybe. But
yeah, it could be hard to find a Robusta. I don't know if, funny enough, I don't think marketing would want to put that on their label. So it's like, it's difficult. You could therefore just short circuit that and go and get some instant coffee and try it with your Arabica. Yeah. But that's it's
kind of shortcuts my test, though. I think it'd be interesting
it's not fair
to go and taste a sold, bagged, whole beaned Robusta versus an Arabica.
Yeah.
And try and buy, the best of each quality of that. Because I don't know. It'd be interesting, even if you hate it. It'd be just interesting to taste that difference there.
As you're saying, I remember, I think it's...
And then you could also blend them.
Well,
you could grind a little bit of each and make a little...
As we always say, another podcast.
Yeah.
Blending versus estate. The Indian place I remember, I just came to mind then, I think it's called Karnataka.
Karnataka.
And that's the place, the people who bring coffee from India into the States and other places, I'm sure. But as I say, you could I think they're in Hillsborough or somewhere here in Oregon. You could try and say, could you give me some of that?
Yeah, interesting. Karnataka.
Kar.
I'll see if I can find a link.
Okay.
No promises, but hopefully I'll find that. Well, and I think I mentioned this briefly in the other episode, but you dropped a bombshell last time we recorded.
What did I say?
You said, and this is word for word quote here.
Yes.
Arabica.
Yes.
Came from Robusta.
Oh, I did drop that in the ears.
Wow.
Yes.
Did you hear the thud that made?
Oh, I did. I read that. I'm still thinking.
You're still reeling from it.
I am, and I'm thinking, was that true? And what I'd read.
So it could be a myth.
No, I don't think so. I think it's more than a myth.
Myth?
I'd like to say that, but no. There's two coffees. I don't have your notes there of there's they found Robusta not that long ago. I think it was in the Congo, and they found it. That doesn't mean that it was that's when it originated at that time. But through genetics, what they've found, and they've just been doing more and more of this in the last years.
I wonder if they did the 23andMe test on those.
Ooh.
The test you can take for your own.
Yeah.
They take a little swab of the coffee.
For our beans. Yeah. But what they found was actually in the genetics that actually the Caneforia was, which I should say, the Arabica they found had, rather than an ugly cousin called the Robusta, they found actually the parent of the Arabica. Before it came two things. One was the Caneforia, which is the Robusta, mixed with the Epoioids. I can't remember I don't know if you have in the notes the name of it.
I don't, but I'll take your word for it.
Yeah, thank you. And but these two were naturally crossed, and it produced the Arabica. So that sort of hits us in the foot a little bit, like, oh, I think these Arabicas are so good, but where do they come from? Half of or more, depending on the genetics,
right.
Actually did come from Robusta. So we're going to go, ooh, let's just hold our horses here.
I was just thinking while we were talking, I wonder if anyone would market their coffee as a canaphoria. Canaphora.
Yeah.
You know, if you just were like, oh, we got this specialty
canaphora. Can of phora. Yeah.
Dude, someone should make a coffee in a can called
Canaphora. Some have, and it's called instant.
They spell Aphoria Folgers, I think.
Oh, there you go. There you go.
Sometimes Maxwell. One part that you mentioned about genetics, and you didn't mention it. I'm just trying to segue.
Yes.
Was how many chromosomes are in Arabica versus Robusta? Because this blew my mind. I know I'm throwing a lot. I'm making everything exciting, which makes nothing exciting. But this was interesting to me.
Yeah, I mean, for Arabica, you've got some more complexities of flavors going on there. It's a little more varied, and
it's like a tie-dye T-shirt.
Why is it like that?
Explosion of flavor.
Okay. Oh, I like that. Okay.
It was just on the top of my head.
Can I use that?
Sure.
My next cupping. This is
$5.
Like a tie-dye. Yeah, okay. $5. Well, here for $10, I'm going to give you the chromosomal makeup of Arabica and Robusta. And this, I didn't realize this. But
I'm anxious. I'm ready for some numbers here.
Okay, numbers. Robusta, 22 chromosomes.
Wow, just let that sit in for us.
22. That's what's making the flavor. That's what's
nothing to shake a stick at.
No, it's good. Those good Robusta beans. And but then you look at the chromosomes of Arabica, and you go from 22 to 44.
Well, bam,
almost double the amount of chromosomes. Now, I don't know so what follows on from that.
The implications.
The implications. I'm sure there are. But one I know, it makes it a more complex bean for a start.
Well, I think that's kind of the story of Robusta and Arabica. Arabica is such a complex, seemingly delicate coffee. You know what I mean? Like it's got this complexity to it that comes along with this delicacy. Like we were talking I guess the period of growth and then the harvest season is 9 months long. So at the end of 9 months, you're harvesting your Arabica coffee.
Yes.
Almost messed up.
That's right. It's hard to change those.
I said those two words so much.
Yeah.
But whereas Arabica is 10 to 12 months. It's just, and then I think what was Liberica was a similar 10 to 12 months.
Yeah, it was a long one. Yeah.
It was a pretty long one. And it's just interesting, with Arabica, you have a shorter amount of time to grow it. And then you have would you say it's a shorter season to harvest it as well?
Yeah, a little bit. So yeah, I think so. Yes.
And there's a smaller window for that. There's less variant in temperature, less variant in not less variant in altitude, but you have to have that altitude.
It's not such a range to go with. Yeah.
Right. Which a Arabica or a Robusta has that ability to go and be at sea level. Has an ability for a larger temperature range. But I don't know. It's just very interesting, the intricacies of Arabica. And that's not to say that Robusta is not intricate. Like, obviously, it's still a plant. There's still so much that goes into it.
It's a whole species on its own. It's there.
Yeah, I mean, it is. I think what's so hard is it's so compared to Arabica.
Right. Which that's a good point, Reed, that it is so compared to Arabica. And I think I said earlier, it depends on your purpose. What's your purpose of this coffee? What's its end product that you're wanting? And if you want a quick caffeine jolt, then you're going to have to go, you would need to go Robusta. And that will achieve your purpose. It'll be good. And it's got its pluses and minuses. It grows quick. It has a bigger yield. You can grow it anywhere, sort of. But it has its negatives too, and so what's your long-term product here? What's the end goal here? In Arabica, you're going to have a different end goal. You're looking for quality of flavor. You're looking for different things that you're looking for in Robusta, and that'll change up which way you're going to go there.
And I wanted to throw in a couple facts for Robusta.
Yes.
Earlier we mentioned the yield from trees. I looked in our notes, 2 to 3 pounds. As opposed to 1 pound.
I knew, I was just going for 2, but yeah.
So double.
Yeah.
Double. Also, tends to be a little bit bitter. Robusta, this is.
It does.
But it has a better crema.
That's right. That's correct.
Do you know why it has, like, what makes it a better crema?
There's a good question, Reed. I'm not sure if I do. My first thoughts are thinking I don't think it's got anything to do with caffeine for a start.
Right.
But it's that lower fat, sugar content combined with the pressure because you're putting in an espresso.
Right.
And the crema, which is a whole thing in itself, it tends to react to that. And it may have more crema because and then going to have to ask the question, is it a better crema in terms of quality?
And then how do you define a better crema?
Is
it how it holds together, or is it the way it tastes?
The layers, is it 3 layers? What's going on there? But you're right. I have read that as a crema, and which is another reasons the Italians put it in their espresso blends because it visually says, wow, that's really cool. I like that. It's got a good crema. I can see it, and that makes me think it's sweet. Till you taste it, and then you realize it's not as sweet as it could have been.
Not so much.
Not so much.
Yeah, and so there is so many differences, and I know we've kind of waffled between both pretty frequently.
It's funny.
But it's
we haven't really. I've looked at different things as we started preparing for this, and I've done different ways. I've have them compared next to each other, Arabica and Robusta, and go down. Then I've had other ones where it's just talked all about Arabica, then all about Robusta.
Yeah,
and it can be a little confusing. But I think listen to the podcast again and say, okay, I picked that up, so I missed that the first time you said that.
Yeah, because there's probably, you know what? It's a big topic.
Oh, it is.
It's a well debated. I don't know if it's debated.
It's not debated. It's
more, everyone's on the same side, pretty much.
Yeah, it's coffee.
But I would say that there's probably other podcasts out there as well. I'm sure the SCA, I know they have a pretty good podcast. I'm sure they might have even some good episodes.
Yes.
That would probably be, hopefully we would add to what they have and vice versa. So I would say we should not be the only source for that.
No, so as you and I found going on the web again, there's a lot of stuff there.
So fun on the web.
Yeah, that's right. Thank you. That's what I'll do all the time.
I'm always surfing.
But there's those books out there that are now coming out that are talking about it in more realistic terms.
Right.
And like Coffee Obsession we're talking about, there's many others out there that you can look at and say, oh, I'm actually getting written material now that's scientific material that's talking about the technical side of what is what, how do they differ.
And I just thought of a fun little fact.
Yes.
That I don't really think fits.
Oh.
I mean, it fits to the topic, but there's no segue to it. But I wanted to talk about... Both trees have this, both coffee plants, insects.
Yes.
And caffeine.
Oh, yeah.
Because I thought that was interesting. You had mentioned that caffeine can actually be a natural deterrent for most bugs.
Right.
And it's kind of like its own, like, taste this and you won't want it again.
That's right. And before you go to the next point, which
Well, I'm on the edge of my seat. I'm on the edge.
And we talk about the caffeine, and we as humans talk about it as, get some more buzz or not as much, whatever.
Right.
For the plant, it's not talking about that. The reason it has more caffeine is to stop bugs coming and eating of their goodness.
Right.
And therefore it deters a lot of bugs, most bugs.
Most
bugs. So I thought I'd say that for you. And therefore the Robusta, it's more hardy and it's more insect resistant than its other cousin of Arabica.
Well,
what are you going to say?
I was going to say I'll try and find a photo. I will try and find a photo, put it on the old video for the podcast. Maybe put a link in the description. But the borer, so it's Borer.
Coffee borer.
Coffee borer. That's hard to say. Borer. But not coffee borer, but borer. It loves caffeine.
Yeah,
it's a energy drink addicted little bug.
As far as I know, that's true, and I was surprised by that myself.
Is that bug just wired all the time? You think about how small a bug is,
yes,
compared to how much caffeine it might be intaking. Like, what's the?
I'm thinking would it be better to have a video of it rather than a picture because you get the whole sort of its movement.
Oh man, all jittery and
yeah.
Exciting. Woo! Does it ever just not move? No,
but it does cause a dilemma because here you're trying to get species and varietals that will be insect resistant, and because the problem of doing that, you suddenly get into the quality of the coffee is not as good as the other one. And but you suddenly produce a coffee that's insect resistant, then voila, you suddenly find the coffee borer loves it.
Right.
You've got a big problem on your hands. How do you get one that's resistant to all.
And I think that segues into kind of what I wanted to maybe end on, because I think we delve into a whole thing. It's like, oh man, start talking about Arabica, Robusta. Oh, we could do a whole other podcast.
We're going to be on
species.
insects soon too. There's a few of them out there.
Yeah, bug stuff.
Bugs. Okay.
But is the merging of species or the cross, what is that? Genetics.
Oh, right, yes.
Genetically merging two different types.
Mutations, natural or not, yes.
Yeah, to combat, bugs or rust on leaves, that kind of stuff is huge. There's so much that you think of, what is there, bourbon, geisha, geisha. What are some of the other ones that you... I'm blanking right now.
Typica, Katura,
yeah.
Catawai. There's a whole lot out there, yes. And you've got Kenya ones. You've got different countries have their own style. It's all a bit of a dilemma right now because of coffee. As I say, the whole genetic makeup, it's not diverse enough, and therefore you get the feeling that we're going to be out of coffee at some stage. It just won't grow anymore because we're not diverse enough, and they're putting a lot of effort into that now to say, how can we diversify coffee more?
Right, genetically.
And we were just talking to there's the Coffee World Research out there that are working with that. We were talking with some who was doing is it Project 86 or it may not be them, but others who there was definitely the CQI are working with how do we diversify, how do we start protecting our coffee stock,
because they also just released, I think, the coffee genome as well. Publicly, so that's available, and they're doing a lot to they got a lot of work they need to do to catch up for it not to be a bit of a dilemma in terms of where is the coffee going. And so that's where I said it might be a whole other episode to go into the species of geisha and bourbon and typica.
Oh, it is.
So I think
varietals is huge.
Yeah, to go into all the varietals.
More botany.
Man, we're never going to stop this botany.
Perhaps we all should go out and get botany degrees.
Oh, man.
Sorry.
That sounds boring.
It sounds about...
But you know what? It might not be.
It may not be. You going, it's caffeine. Let's look at whatever.
Stepping on my own
foot.
The
photosynthesis of this leaf, of coffee leaf. How can we improve it?
Put my foot in my mouth. Anyway, I mean, I think that's kind of a good place to start. And, it might be a little bit briefer than other podcasts or some other things on the internet go into Arabica, but I think it's a good start to this might be your introduction to how those two are different, what even those two things are. But yeah, and there's more. Like we said, there's not just those two species. There's Liberica, the other one that starts with an E.
Oh, Excelsior or something that's called. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
But and they are starting to look at all those, the 120 that we haven't looked at and haven't talked about. 129 probably went up to 130 by we finished. But they're looking at those now saying, we need to look at all these and saying, what can we do?
Right. So there's a lot of work to be done, but I think that's a good kind of look at what those are the big ones in the world. And I would say go try them. Yeah. I wouldn't necessarily suggest trying instant coffee, although it's fine, but I think the results. But, I mean, even comparing instant coffee to regular coffee, taste those side by side. That might be an interesting... Can
you get instant coffee that's not Robusta? I think you can.
You know what? I saw recently, and by recently I mean a month ago, that Coava coffee has a specialty instant coffee.
Doesn't Starbucks do the same?
Yes.
The little vials, the little paper vials they have? That
yes.
You can,
The Coava one looked more specialty.
Oh, no. Looked more specialty.
Yeah. Maybe it's good marketing. But go check out Coava Coffee's instant coffee. Tell us what you think. I've been trying to get some, but it was sold out for a while.
Okay, well, therefore
I think it's like freeze dried or something. I can't remember how it's done.
How do they store coffees?
No, I was interested in just the quality of it.
And Starbucks, you could. I mean, I do seriously mean they have one out, and they've been working at that too. And
I don't mean to bag on it. It might be pretty good. I think is it the Starbucks Via or something
like that. That's why I've got that in my mind, but
I don't know how good it is. My impression is that it's not very good at all.
I've had it.
I don't know. I could be wrong.
What I was comparing it to was specialty coffee, pour over.
Yeah.
I shouldn't have probably been. I need to compare it to other instant coffees out there.
So that's an interesting test. Go to coavacoffee.com, I think it is, and see if they've got any of theirs in stock. Otherwise, try Starbucks. There's one on every corner. Should be easy to find.
Yeah.
So I mean, that's kind of a look at that, and I think it's very interesting. They're not as simple as, this one's good, this one's not. There's pros and cons to both. But again, thank you so much for joining us for another session in botany.
Whoa.
Your degrees will be handed out at the end of the final episode. To be determined. No. And we might go into more of this later. But thank you again for joining us. If you have any questions, feel free to let us know on all the methods. Instagram, Facebook, YouTube. I almost always say MySpace. We do not have a MySpace, but I almost always say it. Almost we should just create one, just so I can say it. Also, feel free to leave a review on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen. And as always, check us out at beanstuff.com. Now my marketing spiel is over. All right. Well, hey, thank you so much for making it to this portion of the episode. I've probably said thank you 1,000 times now. But we look forward to making more episodes and having some more interviews coming up. We're excited to share more with you. So thank you so much.